Before this child can focus her eyes, the law has already made a decision about her. In colonial Virginia, a statute from 1662 made one thing painfully clear. A child born to an enslaved woman would follow the condition of the mother. That rule did not ask who the child would become. It did not ask whether she could learn, love, build, or refuse. It asked which status could be recorded and enforced. Her mother holds a newborn. Nearby, a clerk can record a status. The distance between those two acts is where hierarchy begins to work. How does a rank invented by people reach a life before choice? Large societies need shared rules. Strangers need some way to know what to do with one another before they have time to become friends, rivals, partners, or neighbors. A rule can help strangers coordinate. It can also decide whose comfort counts first. An ancient law code could rank people as superiors, commoners, and enslaved people. A later declaration could speak of equality while leaving women, enslaved people, and native peoples outside the public promise. The details change. The move is familiar. People make a hierarchy, then the hierarchy says it was never made. It says it came from nature, God, or merit. It says it came from purity, tradition, or common sense. That claim matters. If rank looks natural, the person at the bottom is not being wronged. They are being placed. But invented does not mean unreal. Borders, deeds, and court sentences are invented too. Once people enforce them, those inventions can move money and bodies. They can move families and years. The danger is not only cruelty, it is convenience. A ranking system saves effort for the people who benefit from it. They do not have to meet every stranger as a full human question. They can read a name, a body, a household, or an accent as an instruction. The shortcut feels practical. That is why it lasts. Hierarchies often begin in accidents of history. Conquest and profit can join disease, fear, and law. Together they create an arrangement. Then people inside the arrangement develop reasons to defend it. In the Americas, plantation slavery grew through conquest and trade. It grew through markets and calculation. None of those facts created a moral rank. They created an opportunity for power. Then religious and scientific stories were pressed into service. People did not want to say they were keeping others in bondage because it paid. They wanted the system to look pious, rational, and deserved. That is how a vicious circle begins. First exclusion creates disadvantage, then disadvantage is treated as evidence. The evidence is used to justify more exclusion. Keep a group from education, then point at the lack of credentials. Block respected work, then call the blocked people unfit for respect. Mark some households as dangerous, then treat every barrier around them as protection. Caste shows the same survival problem through a different engine. It is not one frozen diagram across all of South Asia. It has regional histories and reforms. It has resistance, politics, and many lived forms. But one mechanism is clear. Rank can travel through birth and work, through marriage and meals, and through the fear of pollution. Now hierarchy does not wait at a courthouse. It appears at the well. It sits at the meal. It enters the wedding doorway. Purity language is powerful because it moves before argument. A social rule can feel like revulsion. A distance between people can feel like hygiene. A history of power can feel like the order of the universe. That does not mean people stand still inside it. Laws can be rewritten. Movements can challenge exclusion. But the household, the labor market, the schoolyard, and the imagination all have to move too. Gender hierarchy reveals a harder version of the same problem. It wraps rule around biological difference. Bodies matter. Pregnancy is real and childbirth is real. What? A womb does not explain why a person cannot vote, inherit, or study. It does not explain exclusion from judgment, property, movement, or public speech. Biology can describe bodies. It does not write a political constitution. Culture often takes one biological fact and attaches a whole government of expectations to it. The body becomes an excuse for the office, the wage, the classroom, and the locked door. This is why history has no automatic justice. It passes forward systems built by people who called their advantage natural. It passes forward wounds from rules that outlived the stories used to defend them. Seeing the invention matters. It stops the hierarchy from looking like fate. But dismantling it asks for more than disbelief. It asks for law, memory, and work. It asks for courage and new habits strong enough to interrupt the old ones. And then the story turns. Because even the strongest order does not stay sealed forever. Every hierarchy lives inside a culture. And cultures are not glass jars with old customs trapped inside. They are arguments that learned how to live in public. A medieval nobleman could kneel in church and hear that meekness was holy. That same evening he could sit at a feast where honor demanded revenge and courage meant blood. The contradiction did not stop medieval Europe from functioning. It made medieval Europe move. Knights tried to make violence holy. Monks tried to make holiness disciplined. Stories tried to imagine a warrior who could be both dangerous and pure. The same pressure lives in modern politics. People want freedom, and they want equality. Give everyone perfect freedom to keep what they have, and inequality grows. Force equality by command, and freedom starts to disappear. The argument never ends. That is not a flaw in culture. It is one of the engines. Human orders change because the rules inside them pull against each other. But there is another movement, larger than any one argument. Step back far enough, and the many human worlds begin to draw together. From the ground, a century can look like breakup. Empires split, religions fracture, and languages scatter into dialects. From a higher distance over thousands of years, the pattern is harder to miss. Small worlds are pulled into wider webs. Around 10,000 years ago, the planet held many thousands of human worlds. Some were separated by mountains. Some by deserts. Some by water that no canoe or memory crossed. Tasmania was one of them. After rising seas cut it from the Australian mainland, its people lived for millennia without contact with other humans. Their wars and alliances mattered completely inside their own horizon. To China or Mesopotamia, to Rome or Egypt, that horizon did not exist. America and Afro-Eurasia were also separate human worlds for most of their past. In the late 4th century, armies fought in the Romang world while power shifted in the great cities of Mesoamerica. Each event mattered to thousands of people. Neither event touched the other. The planet was not yet one stage. It was a sky full of separate fires. By the 15th century, that had changed. Most humans already lived inside one huge Afro-Eurasian web of trade and faith. Disease, diplomacy, war, and borrowed ideas crossed that web too. Travelers could cross deserts and seas through linked ports and courts. Goods moved farther than the people who made them. Stories crossed borders before armies did. Still, other worlds remained. Mesoamerica and the Andes remained outside it. So did Australia and the island worlds of the Pacific. Then ships began closing the distance. This was not a gentle family reunion. Tenochtitlan fell in 1521. The Inca world broke under Spanish force in the 1530s. European vessels entered Australian waters, and British colonization later pushed a continent into the imperial system. The last isolated worlds were not invited into unity. Many were invaded and infected. They were named, taxed, converted, and reorganized. Connection brought translation and exchange. It also brought graves. That is the contradiction at the center of the arrow. Unity can make strangers visible to one another. It can also make them conquerable. Once the worlds are linked, the changes travel both ways. An Italian table becomes hard to imagine without the American tomato. Irish and Polish fields fill with an Andean root. Indian cooking absorbs American chiles. Swiss chocolate depends on a tree from the Americas and on global labor that was often brutal. The ordinary meal becomes a map of conquest. Even traditions that look ancient can be young. The horse cultures of the North American plains were powerful and real. But horses arrived after Europeans crossed the Atlantic. A people can defend a way of life that was itself made by earlier contact. That does not make it false. It makes it historical. There is no pure culture hiding behind the contamination of change. There are living cultures. They take, refuse, adapt, and remember. By the time the world becomes one web, people still fight. They do not become the same. A trader in New York, a shepherd in Afghanistan, a farmer in Peru, and a student in Lagos can live wildly different lives. The arguments around them share more and more machinery. They speak through states, markets, rights, and borders. They also speak through science, debt, news, and weapons that travel everywhere. Enemies can hate each other inside the same vocabulary. That is why a clash between distant powers is rarely a meeting of untouched civilizations. It is often a family dispute inside the same global house. The deeper question is how human imagination learned to stretch that far. For most animals, the world divides into us and them. For most early humans, us was the camp and valley. It was the kin group and the people whose faces were known. Beyond the ridge were others. They could be dangerous or useful. They were people to avoid or raid, to marry, trade with, or fear. Then three strange universal ideas began to grow. The merchant looked across the border and saw a customer. The conqueror looked across the border and saw a subject. The prophet looked across the border and saw a believer. Each vision was different, and each could be generous or ruthless. All three did something new. They imagined that everyone somewhere might belong inside the same order. Money did not ask strangers to love one another. Empire did not ask strangers to share a childhood. Universal religion did not ask strangers to speak the same mother tongue. They asked for a bridge, a coin, a law, a prayer. And once the bridge existed, more people crossed it. This is why the arrow of history does not point toward goodness. It points toward connection. Connection can carry medicine, translation, and sympathy. It can carry slavery, extraction, and erasure. It can widen the human imagination while narrowing the number of worlds that get to remain untouched. The child at the beginning was born into one order. Now we can see the larger pattern. Humans build orders, rank people inside them, and argue with themselves. Then they collide with other orders until the world grows smaller. The fires are no longer separate, and ships have crossed the water. Markets have priced the cargo, empires have drawn borders, and prophets have named the human family. Now another force steps forward, quieter than an army and more patient than a king. Two strangers meet at the edge of trust. They do not share a god. They do not obey the same ruler. They may not even like each other. Then one of them opens a hand, and a small piece of money does what the rest of the world could not.